At this stage I'm going to start taking a closer look at the lips. Since the lips are just sculpted directly from the surface of the sphere, I'm just going to have to mask out the form of the lower lip so I can work the upper lip independently. It's the only way we're going to be able to get a really nice sharp undercut where one lip meets the other. And I'm trying to tuck that upper lip over the lower lip. So you can see right there, I want to get this little sort of donut shape at the corner of the mouth. It's called the nodes of the lips. And it's really important to get that in there to make the lips feel realistic. Going back in with the clay tubes brush, and I'm just going to make sure that I unmask and we'll invert that mask. Actually, let's clear the mask completely. I'm just going to try and inflate across that using the inflate brush now, and now switching to the standard brush, turning up the Z intensity. And creating the fleshy pads of the lower lip. I've got a very sharp line there, and I want to get rid of that, so I'm going to take the move brush and just shift that upper lip down a little bit towards the center and add a light smoothing. A lot of times you'll just have to smooth and rework areas several times to get them to work out. I'm going to isolate the mouth just by Control Shift clicking and dragging a show marquee, and if I go to Tool, Display Properties, I can turn on double-sided now, and I can see the inside of the lips. I can smooth that a little bit. And again, add a touch of smoothing. Very just lightly tapping with the smooth brush. Now I'm just dragging quick strokes down the length of the upper lip. The wrinkles in the flesh and folds have a tendency to flow in a direction contrary to the muscles underneath. The muscle striations run in a circle around the mouth. So a lot of times you'll get wrinkles that flow and radiate out from the mouth. Try and fix the form here a little bit. The lower lip was getting a little bit flat. I want the upper lip to step out further than the lower lip. And I'm going to take the inflate brush and just run it along the crack between the lips to help pucker them together. Undo a couple of those. And go to the standard brush and just stroke along the edge of the lower lip. Now I get the Cupid's bow, that little indentation at the upper lip. The proper name for it is the philtrum. Make sure that that's represented in the sculpture there. These little dips down on the sides of the mouth. These forms are caused by the bottom of the orbicularis oris muscle. It's the circular muscle that radiates around the lips, around the mouth. Make sure I get that in there. And revisiting this area here, this donut form that I was talking about, which is called the nodes of the lips. We definitely want to get that in there. It's one of those things that if it's there, it does volumes to help make the mouth look realistic. If it's not there, you may not notice what's wrong, but the lips just won't look right. I'm going to knock this back a little bit with smooth. As I'm working, I just try and very quickly just sketch the form and the directions that I want it to flow. And I'll try and sketch across two forms. Like I want to sketch from the cheekbone down into the mouth, from the chin across to the corners of the mouth. It just helps to, I find it helps to unify the shapes. It gives a nice rhythm and sort of visual flow between them. I'm still not quite sure about this concave curve there. I'm going to try and pull that out just a bit. I feel like that lower lip is a little bit too thin, so I'm going to try and pull that down and out a bit. And here again, you'll see that I'm working from the underside. It just helps to move around constantly as you're working because it gives you a much clearer understanding of the form that you're working with. And I don't like this line here. This line feels strong, this one feels weak because it's not sure where it's going. So I'm going to bring that over so it's got a very clearly defined flow. And I want to fix this little nick there in the corner of the nose. I'll just use the clay tubes brush to correct that transition. Picking out a couple of hollows here. I'm going to broaden the shoulders a bit. I'm going to switch over to the basic material too, just because it's got a nice specular shine to it, and it really does help me spot the form, because it's got that reflective quality. I'm going to rethink this angle right here. I don't want to sculpt him with a permanent sneer or a permanent like growling brow. I don't like that. I think it's much cooler if something can communicate a malicious intent without having to snarl, because then you know if it snarls, if it's designed for a prosthetic and the actor snarls, or if it's an animatronic head that snarls, or if it's a digital character that snarls, it's going to look scary. Just about anything's going to look scary if you put a snarl on it. But if you can get it to look like it has malicious intent without having to furrow the brow too much and pull the lips up, if you can communicate its character or its intentions without falling back on that, I think that's a good thing. I'm just making very subtle changes to this angle right here. And switching back to the standard brush, just dragging the ledge of the lower lip across. I'm taking the inflate brush now, and I'm just going to inflate into that corner of the mouth there, just to try and pucker it together a little bit more. of a point here. Now at this stage we're going to start looking at the secondary forms of the face here. We're going to start trying to give it a sense of flesh and fat on top of the bone structure. And usually to do that I go in with the clay tubes brush. I turn off the alpha, dial down the focal shift, and by doing this it just helps me build up things in a subtle fashion. I want to get this soft fleshiness in the jowl here. Usually I just stroke very quickly between the forms, and I'll make a lot of use of masks here. This is also the stage at which it's beneficial to break your symmetry. We're not quite there yet, but I'm going to be breaking symmetry here in just a moment, which means I'm going to turn off the X symmetry and just start sculpting asymmetrically. Especially here on these folds around the face, because it's very rare that these would be exactly the same on both sides. Turning up that draw size a little bit just to fill out that hollow in there. Not too much, because I want to keep the chiseled sense of the cheekbones from the front, but I don't want it to be quite so deep. The shadow is pretty harsh right here, so I'm just going to fill that in a little bit. Here, and I'm just bringing that flesh up and over the wing of the nostril. I'm just thinking about some of the secondary forms here in this crest on the forehead. And taking the move brush, I'm just going to pull this out. I'm going to turn on L for lazy mouse, and I'm just going to drag a stroke along this border right here. And I'll replay that stroke. Again, replay stroke is Control 1. It's just like going to the stroke menu and pressing replay last. And going in with the move brush again, and I'm just gonna... Don't like how acute this angle is right here. And bring this out. And with the standard brush, switching to standard and alpha 1, so I can get a finer point on the brush. I'm just going to catch some shadow in here. Let's undo that, it's a little too deep. Now you'll notice when I drag this stroke how it gets these dots on it. You can rectify that by going to the brush menu, going to modifiers, and there's a trails option here. If I turn this up to 2, you'll see that it smooths that stroke out a little bit. It's really helpful when you've got a small draw size. You're trying to pull some nice strokes along, but you're getting that dotting. I'll just go to the brush menu, and I'll actually turn that up to about 5. can see the effect that that has. It allows you to have more control than you do with lazy mouse, but it still evens out the stroke in a nice fashion. It's going to be really useful for sculpting in wrinkles. And I'm going in with the move brush here and just making some subtle adjustments to the thickness of the eyelid here. Need to bring this in. And I'm going to go back in with the standard brush. And I want to get that fold right along the top of the eyelid there. I'll replay that stroke. Now I'm going to go to the brush menu, press P for pinch, select the pinch brush, and I'm just going to try and pinch that together a little bit. Let's zoom in a bit tighter. Go back to the brush menu, pinch. Let's pinch that in. Now I'm going to turn on lazy mouse, and I want to pinch along the edge of the eyelid here. We'll replay that stroke. I'll actually turn up the draw size a little bit. And we'll pinch along the bottom eyelid as well. The eyelid tends to be a lot thicker than you might imagine, so don't make it tissue thin up against the sphere of the eyeball. It has a decent amount of thickness to it. Go back to the brush menu, P for pinch, H for the pinch brush. Again, we still have lazy mouse turned on. There we go. We have a little bit of a dent right there that we want to fix. So I'm going to go in with the clay tubes brush and turn off lazy mouse. I just want to mask that fold in a little bit. This is a fat deposit right at the corner of the eye socket, so I'm just going to stroke that along. Here we go. I'm going to fill in that hollow just a little bit there. And then press the F key to focus back on the whole head. Press the P key to check it under perspective. Alright, going back in with clay tubes, I'm going to add a little bit of a curve to the top of the horn here. I want to mask this top in. Go to the brush menu. Make sure my trails is set to 1. There felt like there was a little bit of a delay on the brush, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't have trails turned on. There we go. And going back in with move, I'm just going to experiment with lengthening the chin a little bit. That's a little bit too much like darkness from Legend. I do like a little bit of length there. You might not mind bringing that nose out just a little bit. When I bring that nose out, I might actually want to bring the eyes out a bit as well, because now they're sitting a little deep in the head. And actually that medial canthus of the eye looks like that's a little too deep. So what I'm going to do is hold down Control and Shift and draw a show marquee just around the eyes and the nose here. If we look at it from the inside, you can see that corner of the eye compared to that corner. I do think this corner of the eye can actually come forward. So I'm actually using the Move brush from the inside to pull that forward. I think that can actually come forward even a little bit more. I don't want it to be too deep in there. A nice shadow there helps create a sense of menace in the character because it casts a shadow on the eye. But I don't know that I want it quite that deep. Now obviously this is going to mean that we need to move the eyes, so I'm going to go to the subtool menu, select the eyes, press the W key for transpose move, and I'm going to pull the eyes forward a bit. And I'm going to hide the other eye. I'm going to just place this eye go back to the head using the Move brush, just tugging at the eyelid. And I'll select the eyeball again, and I might actually scale this down. Press the E key for scale, scale it down, move it over. Now if we select the face again, using the Move brush, I'll conform the inside of the eyelid to the sphere of the eyeball again. Oops. Dial down that Z intensity a bit. We want to add that medial canthus to the eyeball. We don't want it to be quite so overstated. There we are. Okay, I'm going to reveal the rest of the head. I'm going to go back to the eyeball, reveal the other eye, mask out this one. This may not work, but I'm just going to try and go to the deformation menu and click Smart Resim, and it's not going to resymmetrize, so I'll just go back and hide that other eye again. Go to Geometry and click Delete Hidden, and now I'll just click Mirror and Weld to copy that eye back over. And that depth is feeling better to me now. I want there to be a nice distance here that I just wasn't getting before, so by bringing the nose forward, bringing the brow forward, that helped, but I needed to bring the eye forward to compensate. Looking at this curve here. thinking about the way the flesh folds around the corners of the mouth. This is a really good time to find some reference of an old person or an older person online. There's an enormous amount of reference available online, free of charge. Just do a Google image search. You'll be amazed at what you can turn up, even in high-resolution images. And then, of course, there are image sites like 3D.sk and their sister sites. I actually have a membership to 3DSK. I find it really useful for work because I know that I can always fall back on finding something there. A lot of times I'll just use reference that I find on Google. But you're only as good as your reference, so make sure that you try and use some kind of reference. I'm just sketching in some wrinkle flow. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but I'm trying to break up the surface a little bit too. It can help a lot just to have a texture pass while you're sculpting, as long as you don't let it get you preoccupied with the texture too soon, because that's definitely a danger, and you don't want to get worked up and thinking about the texture too early on. You want to make sure that you stay focused on the form. But I find it's kind of nice to have this, especially around the mouth right now. Just going to quickly see what would happen if I take the move brush and shift the lips down. I'm going to look at the mouth from the underside just to make sure that it's not becoming too narrow. It does feel to me now like it is. So I'm going to build out the cylinder of the mouth here. I'm going to fill in this underside of the jaw here, just because I don't want that jawline to be too sharp on the underside. It makes it seem thin and gives it kind of an unnatural shadow there. Remember, there is a muscle underneath there that masses that whole area out. So I want to make sure that I get that. And from the front view, I'm going to snap to a front view, and with the move brush, I'm going to tweak the nostrils a bit. They got a little strange. I'm going to step down a couple subdivision levels for this, since I don't need to be at the highest subdivision level to do this. The wings of the nostrils here have gotten far too thin. Mask this out, pull these out. Pull this down a bit. I think we can actually narrow that. At this stage we're changing the character of the nose, but I think that's alright. I'm going to mask out the nose and invert the mask now. See about bringing it forward just a little bit. There's some nice character to the way it's hooking over, and I don't want to lose that. But I do want to pull it away from the upper lip a little bit. And those nostrils feel too broad now. I'm going to clear the mask. I'm going to try and bring these in. And go back to the clay tubes brush. Fill this area out again. And then step back up a couple subdivision levels and see how this is looking. Go back in with move. There we go. Press the F key to focus back on the whole figure. And that's some interesting character that's happening in the nose now. I think that'll be good for now. I'm going to probably move on, work some other parts, and we may come back to the nose. It depends on how I feel about it when the rest of the figure has been worked another pass. Or the rest of the head, I should say. I'm going to save my work now, and I'm going to try and do something a little extreme. It's one nice thing about working digitally is you can just save your work and then try something really unusual that you might not try under other circumstances, but I'm really going to try and bring that nose out. I'm going to mask it. Invert the mask. I'm just going to pull that nose out. Not that far. Noses and lips and eyes can be really tricky because they can make such a difference to the character. Just little nuanced changes to the nose can really alter the way a head reads, or the way a face reads, or a character overall. So you just have to be patient with them and continue working them. And most of the time I try and make sure that I've got some idea of where I'm going with it. And I know why I'm making the changes that I make, but sometimes you find that you just need to move the shapes around and look for something that kind of calls out to you. And it helps if you kind of understand the structure of the nose as well, and you know the shapes that you're making and why. Actually, I really kind of like what's happening now. That feels pretty regal in its own way. I might try and bring these wings down. Let's bring those nostrils forward. And the nose has planes to it just like the ear does. So I just want to make sure that I've got that structure represented in the nose. I'm going to have to step up a subdivision level here because we're pulling this nose geometry out of a sphere. There's very little there to support it, so we're going to have to do a lot of this sculpting at the higher subdivisions. I'm going to change the focal shift there. I'm trying to just represent the underside planes of the nose, the septum there. Let's try and bring that border of the wing of the nostril down just a touch. The wings of the nostrils are feeling a little too bulbous to me now. You see how it's important to work them from multiple angles, because from 3/4 it wasn't really looking that bad. But then once we get to the front view, we can see what's not working on them. So this is working. The center part of the nose here, the bridge, I'm liking that. I'm going to step down a subdivision level, and using the move brush, I'm just going to try and change some of this structure. I'm going to dial down the Z intensity on the smooth brush and just do a light smooth. There we go. And let's just isolate the nose now using a show marquee. Just makes it faster to work around it. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and save the work.